Oh, my God!
I'll be damned, man. Now, that's heavy.
That is heavy! He brought out a nugget, man.
That was a heavy nugget.
That was a heavy nugget.
Deep in Alaska's untamed rivers lies a brutal stretch of whitewater, known among miners as a dive hole, a place so dangerous that simply entering it feels like a gamble with death. The water is near freezing, currents can surge between 40 to 50 miles per hour, and massive unseen boulders wait beneath the surface. This is exactly where Dustin Hurt and his crew decided to take their biggest risk of the season. For years, this location earned a grim reputation. Miners called it a dead zone, a place where equipment failed, divers got hurt, and entire operations were forced to shut down. But Dustin believed something different. He was convinced that beneath all that danger, there was something valuable, something massive. At the beginning of the season, his team invested heavily. They built a new dive system, installed high-powered pumps, and set up a powerful suction dredge, a setup worth around $250,000. Just running the operation would cost them between $8,000 and $10,000 every single day. It was a huge gamble, but within days, signs of success started to appear. From depths of around 20 to 25 feet, the team began pulling up gravel filled with noticeable gold flakes. Then came the first major cleanup, about 35 ounces of gold, worth nearly $70,000. That moment changed everything. It wasn't just a lucky find. It was proof that something bigger was hidden below, a deep gold trap, not just a scattered deposit. As work continued, the numbers kept climbing. Some weeks brought in 80 ounces, others hit 120. Experts began estimating that thousands of ounces could be locked within this single dive hole. If that trend held, this small stretch of river could produce over 10,000 ounces of gold, valued at nearly $23 million. But the deeper they went, the more dangerous it became. Each dive meant battling violent currents, unstable rocks, and the constant fear of losing oxygen. This wasn't just mining anymore, it was survival. And that's what makes this story more than just a gold discovery. It's about risk, determination, and pushing limits where most wouldn't even try. If you're into real stories of extreme gold hunting and high-stakes discoveries, make sure to subscribe, because what comes next might be even more unbelievable. Flowing through Alaska's rugged mountains is a river that miners have both feared and chased for years. Hidden within it is a deep section known as the Deadly Dive Hole. From the surface, it looks harmless, just another fast-moving stream. But underneath, it's a completely different world. Water temperatures hover between 3 to 4 degrees Celsius, and currents can reach up to 40 miles per hour. Massive boulders sit below, trapping gravel in tight spaces that can pin a diver in seconds. That's why most miners stayed away. Several teams tried their luck here in the past, but none lasted long. Equipment broke down, pumps were ripped away. In one case, an entire dredge system was flipped over by the force of the river. Some veteran miners even claim this river has cost operations millions in losses. It became a place no one wanted to touch, but Dustin Hurt saw opportunity where others saw danger. He spent years studying the river, its flow patterns, the placement of boulders, and historical gold data. Slowly, a theory began to take shape. In fast-moving water, heavier materials like gold tend to settle in areas where large rocks disrupt the current. These spots can act like natural traps, collecting gold over time. If he was right, this dive hole could be holding an enormous amount of gold. He told his team something they wouldn't forget. The most dangerous places often hold the richest rewards. If their theory proved true, this small section alone could yield over 10,000 ounces, worth upwards of $20 to $23 million. But reaching it meant diving into one of the most hazardous environments imaginable. And that's where their mission truly began. When the team first discussed working in the dive hole, the decision wasn't easy. This wasn't just risky, it was potentially deadly. Strong currents, freezing water, and slippery terrain had already caused serious accidents in the past. Some crew members pushed back. They argued the risks outweighed the reward. With daily costs reaching up to $10,000, a failed attempt could drain their entire budget in weeks. And beyond money, there was the risk to human life. But Dustin remained firm. He trusted his research. The patterns were clear to him. Where the river hit large boulders, gold would settle. This place, as dangerous as it was, might be exactly where the richest deposits had been hiding for years. Eventually, despite the fear and uncertainty, the team made their choice. They were going in. Setting up operations there, however, was a challenge on its own. This wasn't a calm riverbank. It was a relentless, high-pressure environment. Even small rocks carried by the current could hit with serious force. Every piece of equipment had to be secured with heavy-duty anchors just to stay in place. Dustin's crew built an advanced mining system specifically for this mission. High-capacity pumps were installed to move massive volumes of water. A powerful suction dredge was used to pull gravel from between the boulders deep below. And most importantly, a reliable air supply system was set up to keep divers alive in those extreme conditions. Because down there, every second mattered. To keep divers alive in those brutal conditions, a constant oxygen supply was essential. The crew installed specialized helmets, communication lines, and backup pump systems to reduce the risks as much as possible. But safety at this level doesn't come cheap. Just setting everything up required an investment somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000. And once operations began, the spending didn't slow down. Every single day, costs piled up. Diesel fuel, equipment maintenance, diver support systems, and crew wages pushed expenses to around $8,000 to $10,000 daily. This wasn't a small bet. If they didn't hit a rich gold layer, the entire budget could disappear within weeks. It was all or nothing, either a massive payday or a crushing loss. Still, Dustin never wavered. He made it clear to his team, if there's a gold trap down there, this setup will find it. Now, it all came down to one question. Was there really gold hidden beneath that deadly riverbed? Within days, they would have their answer. As the machines roared to life at the dive hole, tension filled the air. The first few days were tough. The team worked non-stop, pulling up gravel and rock, but no one knew what lay beneath. Every day, thousands of pounds of material were sucked up through the dredge, processed through the wash plant, and collected in the sluice box. All eyes were on that first cleanup. On the third day, when the sluice box was finally opened, something caught everyone's attention. Tiny flashes of yellow shimmered through the heavy black sand. At first, it looked minor, just a few flakes. But once it was cleaned, there was no doubt. It was real gold. Bright, unmistakable gold pulled straight from the riverbed. That first cleanup produced around 30 to 40 ounces, worth roughly $60,000 to $80,000 at the time. It wasn't life-changing money yet, but it was a powerful sign. It proved one thing: this ground was gold-bearing. For the first time, the crew started to believe Dustin might be right. If this much gold was sitting near the surface, what could be hiding deeper? In some places, gold stays trapped for thousands of years beneath massive rocks, building up into rich deposits over time. Looking back at that moment, Dustin said, "This is just the start. The real gold is still down there." Excitement spread quickly through the team. With every bucket of gravel, hope grew stronger. They might be standing on top of something huge, and if that was true, this dangerous dive hole could turn into a multi-million-dollar strike. But the real battle wasn't being fought by machines. It was being fought by the divers. Every time someone entered the water, the entire crew watched closely. From above, it looked like nothing more than a fast-moving current, but below the surface, it was a completely different world. The force of the water was intense, sometimes feeling like a 40 miles per hour push. Just staying in place was a challenge. At depths of 20 to 30 feet, divers worked between massive boulders packed with heavy gravel. This was where gold could be trapped, but also where danger was at its highest. Airlines and gear could easily get snagged between rocks. One wrong move, and a diver could become trapped in seconds. And then there was the biggest risk: oxygen. Each diver relied on an air supply system from above, but if a hose got caught or a pump failed, breathing could quickly become a serious problem. That's why every dive required backup systems and constant communication. Even Dustin went down himself multiple times. He believed that to truly understand the river, you had to reach the bottom. But every dive came with new risks. Strong currents could suddenly push divers off balance. Loose rocks could shift without warning. One experienced diver summed it up perfectly. "This isn't mining. It's a fight against nature." And still, they kept going back. Day after day, they dove into those freezing, violent waters, driven by the belief that thousands of ounces of gold were waiting beneath. But the truth was simple. Every time a diver went down, they were risking their life. In the beginning, the gold they found was just a hint of what might be there. But as they dug deeper, everything changed. Divers started reaching the layers beneath the large boulders, areas filled with dense gravel and heavy black sand. This is exactly where gold tends to collect over time. When this material started coming up through the dredge, the results shocked everyone. Within just a week, gold recovery numbers began to rise fast. What started as a few dozen ounces quickly turned into 80, even 120 ounces in a single week. At that time, that meant roughly $160,000 to $240,000 worth of gold in just 1 week. That's when it hit them. This wasn't just a random deposit. They had found something much bigger. Over the years, the river's powerful current had carried gold downstream and locked it beneath those massive boulders, forming a natural trap. Every load of gravel brought up more flakes, more small nuggets, more proof. Dustin said it best. If this keeps up, this place could be huge. The team pushed harder. Pumps ran around the clock. Divers stayed down longer. More and more material was pulled up every day. And soon, it became obvious, this dive hole was no ordinary spot. There was something big hidden beneath it. Many on the team started to believe they were working in a section of river holding thousands of ounces of gold. If the trend continued, this operation could explode into a multi-million-dollar discovery. But as the gold kept coming in, a bigger question started to form. How could so much gold be concentrated in such a small area? It couldn't just be luck. Geologists and experienced miners began studying the river more closely, analyzing the flow, the rock formations, and the way material settled underwater. Slowly, a theory began to take shape. They called it the hidden gold trap. Gold is extremely heavy. As it travels downstream from the mountains, strong currents carry it along. But the moment that flow is disrupted by large boulders, deep pockets, that's where everything changes. Whenever gold moves downstream, it doesn't just disappear. The moment it encounters natural barriers, cracks in rock, deep pockets, or layers of dense gravel, it begins to settle, and over time, it builds up. For thousands of years, rivers keep flowing on the surface, but beneath, heavy gold slowly collects in these hidden pockets. That's exactly what made the deadly dive hole so unique. This section of the river suddenly drops in depth, and with massive boulders scattered across the bottom. Between those rocks are tight gaps and hollow spaces, perfect places for gold to get trapped as it travels with the current. Geologists believe this kind of structure acts like a natural gold vault. Some experts even suggest that if this trap has been forming for centuries, or even thousands of years, it could be holding an enormous amount of gold. Every year, fresh gold washing down from the mountains could have been settling right here. That would explain the incredible results coming from such a small area. Dustin had already started to see it. By studying the flow of water and the placement of boulders, he suspected this wasn't just another spot. It was something rare. If the theory held true, they weren't just mining a deposit. They were tapping into years, maybe centuries, of accumulated gold. And if they managed to fully uncover this trap, this dive hole could easily turn into a multi-million-dollar site. But as the gold increased, so did the danger. This wasn't a normal mining operation. Every single day was a balance between risk and reward. From the outside, things looked controlled. But in reality, one small mistake could shut everything down instantly. The biggest threat came from the machinery itself. The entire operation depended on powerful pumps, dredge systems, and suction hoses. If even one of these failed, everything would come to a stop. The river didn't make things easy either. Strong currents constantly pushed rocks into the equipment, clogging pipes and damaging parts. If a pump failed while a diver was underwater, there was no time to waste. They had to be pulled out immediately. A major breakdown wouldn't just cost money, it could destroy the entire setup. But even that wasn't the biggest risk. The real danger was the divers. Working at the bottom of the river, surrounded by massive boulders, was incredibly dangerous. Hoses and airlines could easily get caught between rocks. If a diver couldn't free themselves quickly, The current could overpower them within seconds. That fear, being trapped underwater, was always there. And then there was the weather. In Alaska, conditions can change fast. Heavy rain in the mountains can cause water levels to rise suddenly. A flash flood could hit without warning, wiping out the entire operation in minutes. Machines could be swept away. The crew would have no choice but to abandon everything. Dustin understood the risks better than anyone, but he also believed something simple. The biggest gold always comes with the biggest danger. That's why every decision had to be precise. One wrong move wouldn't just mean losing money. It could put lives at risk. As the gold recovery kept increasing, the team began to realize something important. This might not just be a good spot, it could be a major gold zone. Looking at the data from the first few weeks, geologists and experienced miners started breaking it down. Each cleanup showed more gold than the last. That pattern meant something. It suggested that beneath the surface layer, there could be a much richer deposit waiting. When they calculated the weekly numbers, averaging between 80 and 120 ounces, it became clear that they hadn't even reached the full potential yet. Some estimates suggested that this single dive hole could contain over 10,000 ounces of gold. At gold prices around $2,200 to $2,300 per ounce, that meant a total value of roughly $22 to $23 million from just one small section of river. For Dustin and his crew, that kind of number was almost unbelievable. Whitewater mining usually brings in small amounts. Even a few hundred ounces is considered a big success. Now, everything came down to one final question. Was this deadly dive hole truly a $23 million gold jackpot? Or was there something even bigger still hidden beneath? Because sometimes, the real treasure is the one that hasn't been discovered yet.